happy to be with you today. What we look is exactly about these leading and shifting times, and we look at it through a very simple approach, which is continuous disruption. And for that, we'll take examples. Ask your nephews, nieces, children. They sometimes have no clue how to rewind a cassette with a pencil. And that was of the obvious. That was something that was so common for us. This is gone. Change is constant. And it's not only for autumns.
Pero aquí no veo.
Microphones up until you're introduced.
It's all good, sorry.
And we have this incredible story of Kodak. And Kodak inventing, through Steve Simon, inventing that first digital camera. A beautiful object, 4 kilograms. 4 kilograms of technology, 0.01 megapixel at that time, 23 seconds to take a picture, never launched. Of course, in this shape, you cannot launch something, but never gone further than the research level. Because it was 75, because there was no ecosystem, because there was nothing available to share pictures on a cassette. There was no ecosystem, so there was no possibility to bring that further. However, inventing ahead is preparing you for the future. And that beautiful sentence that I found on the internet tells it all. Uber yourself before you get Kodak. This is preparing ourselves for something that is key, the future. Let's not prepare ourselves for the past. So often we are sticking to the past. And let's look at what has happened to the music industry. The music industry has been shifting very interestingly from an era of vinyl to an era of plastic that was still material music. And then we see that in the 2000s, the material is gone, it's all electronic, dematerialization of music. And then, even worse, dematerialization of ownership. No ownership anymore. We don't own any music anymore. We stream it. And then we see who has been losing in the game. Sony lost because they stick to their factories producing plastic, vinyl, plastic. Apple stick to their iTunes and were not the first movers on streaming. And what it tells us is that up to streaming, we were living in a world of scarcity. And now, as streaming is coming up, we live in a world of abundance, where we don't buy one album, music, series. We listen to whatever we want. It's a free party. And that's the first lesson. Abundance will reign. And this is valid for every single industry. Over time, abundance will be the norm. So let's look further on what happens with automotive industry. The automotive industry will be shaken by the driverless or autonomous cars. It will be fundamentally transformed. And what Tesla has paved the road for is this image where we see that cars are communicating among themselves. So Tesla has been the first one to drive around data of collecting elements around the road. So they have mapped the roads so that they can have truly autonomous cars in some years. But also what is coming up is data around the driver or the passengers, because drivers will not be there. It will be data around passengers. This will be the health check. The cars will be our health checks. And this is super important to understand, that cars will drive health. And of course, they will drive us from point A to B, but they will be our health check. So a lot of data will be collected there. And then we can think disruption. And when we talk disruption, we look at who disrupts. It is us as consumers, which we are very, very much influencing. Netflix, Uber, Apple, they didn't invent anything. They put to us elements of practicing our liberty of choice. we choose. We kill companies because we make choices. And that is very important, because if you are future-oriented, then that law of know your competitor that was super important become maybe less relevant than knowing your disruption. And we know disruption, it comes from an environment, it comes from ecosystems, unbundling the elements that revolve around the car, for example, but also unbundling the element of behavior we have. When we say consumers become citizens, it's because we have a voice. We have a voice in what we say. We put stars, 5 stars, 3 stars. We choose on stars. We express stars. We take our comments as extremely serious. So it's over the time when I would send a letter to any company to complain or to congratulate. Time has come to say what we believe is important to the rest of society. And what will be affecting our behaviors and our elements, it is key. It is technical elements. And those technical elements are given. They will happen with or without us. It is mixed reality, it is the blockchain and not only the Bitcoin, it is the nanotech, the quantic IT, all those things will be coming up. But at a very important point, it is not sufficient. Our role as leaders, and this is what leadership in shifting times is, to take that into account. How can we be leading, but also inspiring? We can not only be leading alone. We cannot be linear alone. We need to be thinking exponential and circular, and so on and so on. Communities, holacracy, all these things will be coming up. And what happens is that we have to be able to handle the past and the future at the same time. This is being ambidextrous. And the lesson number 3 is it will be exponential. And why will it be exponential? Because simply our world will be made of innovation and renovation at the same time. At the same time, we need to take care of the old, the vinyls and the CDs that will continue to live, but not forever. But they pay for the innovation, the roots and the wings, solving unconscious problems of consumers, of citizens, and making sure that we still renovate the old while creating the future. Ambidextrous, ability to write both hands and to anticipate what will be happening, coming up, because we will create it. And for that, we need a different mindset. And that mindset is set on what we learned. Don't break the rules. In reality, we need to break those rules, but we should not break the law. The law is the principle, the values of our company, the leadership elements that made our company successful. But break the rules is don't do the standards. Don't deal with only with the past. Make trials, be agile, give chances to the next generation. They'll be the one. Today we need incompetent leaders. Incompetent leaders knowing that they're not competent anymore and they need to tap on the next generation to make things happen. The incompetent leader is the one that will create fertile soil around them to leave space for the next generation to create things under their auspices, under the law, under the direction and the mindset. And that's the roots and wings that will help us create the future. The roots that pays our salaries, that invest, that generate money to invest into the future. And that space is relatively simple. When we look at that, immediately something pops up in our mind. I'm sure you have noticed it. And that's it. You notice that there's a mistake here. And we have all been educated on spotting mistakes. We all have been educated on the red pen. Remember when you got back your math or language, it was full of red pen, mine at least, full of red pen, because we're good at spotting mistakes. But what about growing on what is important is growing on success and boosting success? This is what our role is as leaders. We need now to go to the next element of forgetting what our education has been giving us as reflexes. We are not born to fix. We are born to build. And this is the key element. We are born to build, and we shall not do it in isolation. We shall do it in an ecosystem around ourselves as a team, around our company as a set of different capabilities, agilities we have never had before, but we have to tap into. We are not self-sufficient as companies. We need to tap into a wider world, and this is absolutely key. And for that, the lesson number 5 is thou shalt transform. From the past, you step into the future. Thank you. This was a very short, but these are the 5 elements I truly believe in, and we apply them at Nestlé. It's not always easy, but we try and apply them.
Awesome. Thank you. Definitely thought-provoking and definitely interesting to put that in the leadership context for most organizations. So if you think back to the first lesson, I think it was abundance. How does that display in leadership within organizations?
It's a very good one because it's not anymore materialistic. It's abstract, but at the same time, it's super concrete. Is how can you be at the service of your people? Because being incompetent as a leader is, of course, is thought-provoking. Being incompetent as a leader, you recognize you cannot do it all. However, what you can do is support and help your team do things better because they might not have this experience that you have, but they have the skills that you don't have. So this complementarity should be in abundance. Give them your time and your availability, if I may.
Yes, no, that's a really good point, because sometimes as a junior leader, you may not necessarily get the time of the senior leader for the very virtue of that they're super busy. So definitely, and there's definitely two-way traffic to be gained, or two-way lessons to be gained. I love the analogy of having the pen and the cassette tape. I'm of the vintage that still understands what that means, but I also saw a recent poll with young children who just said, what is this thing? And yeah, experience tells us something. So feel free, if you're in the audience, to ask your questions, type them in. At the moment, I'll just ask the things you triggered for me. Because having been in leadership training for quite a number of years, I always found it hard to have senior leaders be vulnerable enough to say, hey, I'm incompetent or I don't get this, and to be open about that and invite a younger person in to, let's say, give insights, or even they'd nearly rather go and hide and find the information or the solutions privately and then come back in a leadership spotlight. Is that something you experience? Is that something you coach leaders on? What do you do?
Not at Nestlé, of course. No, you're totally right. And I think it's beyond companies, it's the education we have been having. You cannot fail. At school, you cannot fail. At university, you cannot fail. So the whole thing is set so that failure is not part of the equation. Today, things tend to change because to succeed, you need to try. And I'm in Berlin these days, and we're visiting startups. And the motto is fail fast. It's a very common one, everyone has heard it, but it's true. And they say we don't invest, some venture capital say we don't invest in startups that have not failed.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, sorry.
Yeah, and do you think that's widely embraced in Europe, though? Because, I mean, I hear it a lot in the startup scene, especially in the United States and the North Americas. But I also, at the same time, feel a stigma around failure in, let's say, European markets, and maybe some parts of Asia the same, where failure is not that acceptable and is, let's say, personal personal egg on face, let's say, or not as widely respected. So I totally agree with you, by the way, but it's just, where do we stand in Europe on this?
Now, these things take time. However, I think there's a movement because, those investment funds, they need to find people who are visionary in a way, but it's not granted. And if they want the return on their money, they need to invest on people. They need to spread the risk. Some of them will succeed highly. They will have failures. So it's now part of the beta, the risks they are ready to take. Absolutely. I think that's key what you just said. And it's been taken into account much broader. I think Europe, in terms of investment, still exists, of course, but the world is getting very connected, and that spreads quickly.
Yes, exactly. So given the last 18 months and the drastic change that we've all experienced because of COVID, and having to find new ways of working, how did you handle that as an organization? What were the big leadership takeaways that you had to adapt to, where you say, look, here is how I as a leader, or the team that I'm educating as a leader, embrace the disruption that was all around us, because we couldn't escape it. Nobody could.
In a very strange manner, I think that COVID has just not invented anything, but just accelerated things that were in the making. And it has put the tip of the iceberg more visible. So this digitalization, for example, the fact that people we went even faster on some development. That's very stunning. This thing is a total catastrophe, but at the same time, it has brought so much of pushing us to the next elements. It's stunning.
Yes, exactly. I agree. And I think I mentioned it in one of the panels on the Blue Channel earlier, is that for some people, digital transformation came via COVID, and it wasn't necessarily the leadership decision.
Exactly. Absolutely. You have this famous
a meme that's traveled, right?
COVID-19, but it was in the making. COVID never invented anything. It accelerated it.
Yeah, it's very true.
And it's skilled. We got skilled so fast in any application that was new.
Yeah, and I think everyone's learned to pivot. The managers that don't pivot or that don't learn to pivot, what's your advice to them?
Well, get the heat. Feel the heat. That's the only chance we have. Is we are good when we feel the heat. It's a bit stupid to say so, but as soon as you feel the heat, then you're very, very adaptable. And when you plan long and all that looks nice, but nothing compares to it.
Yes, it's like chemistry, right? It's until the pressure cooker effect happens, nothing really typically changes until it pops. So yeah, it's a good analogy. We have a comment here from Magdalena. There are some methodologies who focus on continuous improvements. For example, eliminate losses, celebrate the red, fill the gaps. How do they fit into the concept you shared, born to build, not born to fix?
Yes. My presentation puts things a little bit black and white and a bit to the extreme. Of course, it is not only like we need to fix elements. Basically, when we say innovation and renovation is for the existing products, and then we ask consumers what they need, and we make it happen to that. Innovation, that's the renovation. Innovation is reinventing the thing of the future on unconscious consumers' problem. So I would be tempted to adhere to what she was saying, is renovation is a way to fix elements. Innovation is putting us to the next level, to the next stage. And that's very complementary, and they have to happen together. But Moonshots will not happen by fixing small elements. And Moonshots are the thing that will completely transform a company. I calculated that Nestlé, we had 4 kind of radical elements in 125 years, 150 years, sorry, 150 years. 4 big inventions. It's not much. It's not much, but they have transformed the company and helped it become what it is today. And the rest is a lot of maintenance to make sure that what we have is solid and able to grow with the needs of the consumers. And that's fixing in a way. So I totally adhere to the point.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. It's fascinating because a lot of leadership and innovation thinking says it should be incremental change. Yet, if you look backwards in the Nestlé example, it was really 4 big ones, and then lots of renovation to go with it. I love that. Yeah, love that.
And they live together. No way.
Yeah, absolutely. Now we have another question from Nadia. She says, or she asks, do you think that defining high performance employees or implementing such high performance programs will move teams forwards? And how, I guess?
It's a very difficult question to answer. I think yes. I think it's important to showcase people who are really talented and not school talented, but really hand talented and brain talented to move as showcases the company ahead. That's very important. So I would say yes, and maybe not on academic terms. This is what I would be tempted to say, and maybe on different terms than the one we usually have had. It's really people who think differently, and hence inclusion can be reinforced. And I think free economics is a great way of looking at a company in a little bit differently, because these things will live together. We will still have the academic, but we will have also people who think mavericks, who are mavericks. And this is why this ambidextrous approach is key. So this ability to be a little bit schizophrenic in looking at things in 2 angles.
Awesome. Yes, I think, sometimes you need a whole board of characters, even in your mind, to have that conversation that needs to happen to drive you forward. So I think it's an interesting one. Do you think
the conversation will be sometimes more difficult, because as a leader you will have more difficulty to handle people who are not necessarily on your side, on your whatever origin or whatever that is, doesn't matter. But it will be richer. It will cost a little bit more time.
Yes. Yeah, definitely more time. And yeah, probably a clear effort from everyone to actually get on that agenda, because what I see in organizations that although a lot of people or organizations will say we like to be in diverse, equal, and all of that, but they still have a long way to go to actually make that happen. Do you have any final thoughts this is my last question for you, on how can leaders really encourage, embrace, and I suppose champion this diversity when maybe internally the culture may still be stuck in the previous generation management or the previous generation thinking? So if you're that maverick, what do you do?
Yeah, they are being challenged. I think they're being challenged, and this is difficult, because we also like our comfort zone, and me first, no problem. But they are being challenged. They are being surprised by people who are not of your turf, and it's not always easy, because we have a tendency to make sure that we identify and we spot spontaneously, and of course this will be sometimes me too's.
Yeah,
I know what I'm talking about. And so dare challenge yourself or get challenged by others, but dare that. Yeah.
Great. I mean, I think it's been inspirational, insightful, and definitely food for a lot of thought for most of us to what you brought forward in terms of ideas. So I'd like to thank you very much, Bertrand, for coming on the platform, and I'm sure you are available for questions and connections after.
Please join me anytime, contact me anytime. I'm available for discussion and innovate.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Bertrand.
Thank you, Anne.
We'll move forward with the program. So we have had some great inspiration and great